First of all, Congresswoman, Dr. Fauci testified before your committee behind closed doors again in January. What would you like to ask Dr. Fauci that he did not answer in January?
Well, I think a lot of our questioning is going to have to do with the emails, the communications that he had with his top advisors, why they were being done on personal emails versus the official government email addresses, why they deleted them. It seems clear, and Dr. Morin's, quite frankly, in a number of his emails said that they were using the private Gmail because they wanted to evade freedom of information laws. So we want to know what exactly were the communications that involved Dr. Fauci. Dr. Morins had also talked about a secret back channel that he had to communicate with Dr. Fauci as it relates to the EcoHealth Alliance, which we know the NIH had funded, and then a lot of that money ended up at the Wuhan lab to do work, which we believe is gain-of-function research. So there's a lot of questions relating to that. And we also want to know about his role, Dr. Fauci, in the actual approval of these grants, because he is the person who signed off on these grants, yet on a lot of the questions we asked him behind closed doors, he claimed he wasn't familiar, he didn't recall, or he wasn't directly involved. So on one hand, he's using that as a defense to say that he was not involved directly with these grants, but on the other hand, he was the person that signed off on them. So we're trying to reconcile that.
Okay, so you're requesting Dr. Fauci's personal email and cell phone records. I mean, is he being investigated or alleged to have done something underhanded to deliberately deceive the country?
Well, it seems clear that a lot of those top officials at the NIH were using personal email to avoid freedom of information laws. They didn't want to have that transparency. They didn't want to have that accountability, particularly when they saw that the subcommittee and other government officials, senators and members of Congress had been filing these freedom of information law requests. They significantly shifted. The other thing that Dr. Fauci had said to us was that he no longer believed that, the lab leak theory was a conspiracy theory. Okay. He actually said that
Congresswoman,
behind. Yes.
In fact, I have that part of the testimony that I want to get to later. But right now, what I would like to do, we'll get to that. But yesterday, the subcommittee released the transcript of Dr. Fauci's closed-door testimony from January. Yes. I want to go here first. Here, this is one on social distancing. It says, Fauci, I don't recall. It sort of just happened. It appeared. I don't recall like a 4 discussion or whether it should be 5 or 6 or whatever. It was just that 6 foot is question. Did you see any studies that supported 6 feet? Fauci, I was not aware of studies, just an empiric decision that wasn't based on data or even data that could be accomplished. I don't recall like a discussion of not it's going to be, it sort of just appeared that 6 feet is going to be the distance. Now let's take a look on masking children. Do you recall reviewing any studies or data supporting masking for children? Fauci, I might have, but I don't recall specifically that I did. I might have. So Congresswoman, does the committee take into consideration that this was a novel coronavirus? Novel isn't new. We hadn't seen the likes of it, not to mention there wasn't even a vaccine at the time for those who wanted to be protected. So it was a bit of a working trial. Is that, taken into consideration?
Well, sure, it is taken into consideration, but this entire time they were saying that those decisions were based on actual science, and then here you have this testimony saying that they were arbitrary decisions. They were just they just pull these numbers out of the air, if it's going to be 6 feet or how young, and even when there was scientific evidence to show otherwise that the masks were damaging to young children, they kept those mandates in place. And so, look, I don't know that it's something. What can we do about it? I think learn from this experience and make sure going forward that we don't make these same mistakes. I mean, this was a lot of the things that they now say are arbitrary decisions and guidelines. They had a tremendous impact on the economy, on people's livelihoods, on children's education, on people's mental health. And so we have to be much more cautious going forward. As novel as the pandemic was, they shouldn't have been basing these mandates that were very restrictive, just pulling them out of thin air as opposed to actual scientific evidence and medical guidance, as other physicians throughout the country were saying otherwise.
Let me take a look at one more excerpt from the January transcript. This is on the Wuhan lab leak theory. Do you think the possibility or the hypothesis that the coronavirus emerged from a laboratory accident is a conspiracy theory? Fauci, well, it's a possibility. I think people have made conspiracy aspects from it, and I think you have to separate the two when you keep an open mind that it could be a lab leak or it could be a natural occurrence. I believe the evidence that I've seen weighs my opinion towards one, which is a natural occurrence, but I still leave an open mind. So I know you said you want to use this as a learning opportunity, but are you also looking to hold Dr. Fauci accountable for the COVID pandemic and charge him with negligence or something?
Well, I think certainly we want to get to the bottom of what happened here. There were American tax dollars that went to the Wuhan lab. They were doing gain of function research. And the bottom line here is we need to know if it came from the Wuhan lab or any lab, or was this man-made, or was it come from a natural occurrence? We've seen the evidence, so far, our intelligence community, whether it's the Department of Energy or FBI, they've indicated, as have other officials that have come before us, including the former CDC director, Dr. Redfield, they came before us and all said that everything that they've seen shows that it emerged from a lab. Dr. Fauci did go out of his way to suppress the lab leak theory early on. In fact, there were scientists that had got together on a conference call, said that they all thought it was a lab leak, and then Dr. Fauci had suppressed that theory, and a paper, scientific paper emerged that said otherwise, that it was a natural occurrence. So what happened there within 3 days that everybody changed their mind? We want to know what's going on. I mean, that's the bottom line. The American people deserve to know how this virus started, and we need to know. If we are truly going to prevent the next pandemic, we need to know the origins. And so we need cooperation.
Sure. Could this end up in charges against Dr. Fauci?
I mean, it could. I mean, I'm not prejudging anyone. I'm simply saying that we need to follow the facts to where they lead. If there was something that was done that hid from the American people or used tax dollars inappropriately, then yes, potentially there can be criminal charges. I mean, certainly perjury. We've seen a number of these officials already say one thing in closed door testimony, and then say another thing when we're at a public hearing, and it's not reconciled. And so there's been perjury that has been committed before this committee, and that in itself is a crime. Deleting government files is a crime. So there's a number of things that, depending on if the DOJ or they're actually going to investigate it and press those charges and enforce the law, certainly there could be criminal charges here among some officials within the NIH.